Hi, I am Jordan Taylor, the CEO and co-founder of Medley. I am excited to be here today with my colleague, Abigail, our head of coaching, and Susan, who has been coaching with us for 3+ years at Medley. Susan, would love if you could introduce yourself, and then we'll pass it to Abigail.
Sure. I'm Susan Eckstein. I'm an executive and leadership coach. I've been coaching for about 10 years, been with Medley for about 3.5 years, and have coached hundreds of group coaching sessions with Medley.
It's so great to have you here. I'm Abigail Finck, head of coaching here at Medley, and I have the privilege of working with you and all of our other coaches that help bring our programs to life. I would love if you could share how the transformation that you see in groups. You can pick a specific example.
I was leading a group of C-suite executives, and one of the things that's very important right out of the gate is to build psychological safety and trust. Mm-hmm. And I do that by asking a prompt. And I answer the prompt, and everybody goes around. And we did that. We all went around. People shared a little bit. And then I asked the prompt again. And I said, okay, now let's go a little bit deeper. And everybody went around and got pretty deep really fast. And at the end of that session, when I asked what was people's insights about today, someone said, I'll never forget it. He said, I would have told you I am vulnerable. And after hearing everybody today, I am not comfortable with vulnerability. So this was something that he intentionally worked on throughout. I think we had 9 sessions together throughout those 9 sessions. And in one particular, I want to say it was halfway through the cohort, we had started to talk about one thing, and the conversation started to get quiet. And he shared one of the most vulnerable things that opened up this incredible conversation. And I, as the facilitator, I got to lean back and watch others ask him questions. And it was such a rich conversation. And it was one of those moments where I saw somebody really lean in, notice something about himself as a result of being part of the group, and start to work on that throughout the group process.
It's amazing. Isn't it incredible how contagious openness is in a group?
Always. And when someone is willing to be vulnerable and share first, that opens the doorway for other people to say, okay, I'm not the only one.
When they have a chance to explore that and show up in that vulnerable space, how do you think that impacts them as leaders in their roles and in their teams? Like, how do you think that carries over?
Oh, it definitely carries over. I've had people say, I didn't realize how important silence was and creating that space for reflection. I've had people say, I love that you're leading with questions. I've always been I need to know the answer instead of asking people, well, what's coming up for you? What do you notice about this problem? And they're taking those tools and bringing it to their teams. I've heard people say, I realize that I've been modeling a behavior that I don't want my team to do. And they see that in real time. So then they're taking that experience and bringing it back to their teams.
I'd love to hear a little bit, Susan, about how the group provides a space for accountability. And how does accountability show up in the group experience?
Accountability is huge. And at the end of a session, we've unpacked a topic. We've talked about what action steps are we going to take. And because it's a very safe space, they're more likely to do it. They're more likely to reach out to each other in between sessions if they need support. And when they do it, and they come back the next session and we say, so how did that go? And they're celebrating it. There's such a there's a community of people around who are like, we knew that you could do it. Or somebody, perhaps it didn't go the way they had hoped. We're able to unpack that in real time, and they get the support that they need.
I think a challenge in the moment that we're in right now, where there's so much change and AI is affecting everything, is that it's really hard to lead right now. It's really challenging. Every leader is faced with a tension between projecting calm and assurance in this moment of change that we're in, while also having to grow and adapt themselves. And that's super hard. Are you seeing that in your groups? And how can group coaching support people with that tension?
I see the tension in almost all of the groups
Yeah.
that I coach, where leaders believe that, okay, like you said, I have to show up calm. I have to be confident. I have to be able to manage all of this change that is happening. While at the same time, maybe they have change fatigue, or they're exhausted, or they're anxious about what's happening. And the wonderful thing about group coaching is that people can leave that tension at the door. So my goal is always to create a sense of psychological safety so that people can slow down and not feel like they have to perform and be on.
Yeah, I love what you're sharing. It reminds me of an earlier conversation we were having, Jordan, about authentic leadership and what it means to be an authentic leader. It is really tempting to want to know all the answers and to get it all right and show up and be perceived in a certain way. But something that I love about group coaching and Medley sessions in particular is that, yes, it's this psychologically safe space to kind of reveal, but it also is connecting individuals to their inner leader so that they can access that in moments of change, in a moment where like this actually requires vulnerability and assuredness. How can I hold both together and support everybody in moving in that direction?
You had mentioned authentic leadership.
Yeah.
During one of the sessions that we were talking about with, that I was doing with executives, the CFO in the group had said that she was so excited about some of the things that her team was doing. She wanted to celebrate the team, but she didn't know how, being in the C-suite. And somebody else in the group said, well, how would you like to show up? What would feel comfortable for you to lean into? And the group started to work with her and ask her questions to stretch her so she could be more of herself instead of feeling robotic in the C-suite when she was talking to either the board or the CEO or other people like that. And it was wonderful to watch how the group was willing to challenge her beliefs around what it meant to be an authentic leader and how you can work almost on a dial of, depending on what room you're in, you can be more authentic if you're just with your team versus if you're going to be in the C-suite with other people.
It's funny because what I'm hearing from you, Susan, is influence and how to influence different audiences effectively. And, it's funny, there's always a hot debate about soft skills. Are these skills, fluffy, or are they intangible? And Edith and I have always had the strong point of view that these are not soft skills. These are not, fluffy, nice to have. They're critical skills for being able to operate and be commercial in a business environment. And I think what has been incredible to see is we'll have sort of Medley cohorts and Medley groups where, people will come into it thinking they're going to learn, how to be better at feedback and, better at this and better at this sort of leadership competency. They do those things and they leave with strong relationships in their group and in the broader cohort. And then that actually concretely enables them to do their jobs more effectively after the program and during the program. They're trying to get something done with procurement or with finance or with another business unit. They know someone to call. They are trying to relate to someone on their team who's dealing with a challenge that they hadn't anticipated, previously. An insight might be sparked from someone in their group who had a similar challenge. And so I just think that is such a misconception, and that people who are able to be really self-aware, be able to listen and read others, are generally more effective at their jobs. But curious to get your take on that.
I agree with everything you said, because like you said, you can learn skills from anywhere, but having the ability to explore different things, some of those soft skills like empathy, active listening, having a coaching mindset. This is something that we do in the group. Every group, I always say at the beginning of the group, we're not giving advice in these sessions.
No fixing.
Right, no fixing. We are leading with questions, and your goal is to help the other person find insight, learn something about themselves. And in that process of back and forth, they're seeing themselves in other people. I've had more than one person over the course of my tenure say, I've never understood how you can use silence and how impactful that is to pause. Because leaders, they're just going so quickly and they've got to get stuff done.
How are you seeing people process change as it relates to AI right now?
Last week, we were talking about navigating change.
Yep.
And one of the things that they were talking about is things are moving so quickly. They could make one decision, right now, and then an hour later, it's completely different. But understanding that change is constant.
Yeah.
And knowing that that's okay. They don't have to have all the answers, being able to model vulnerability for their teams, trusting that they are capable to figure this out, even though they may not have all of the answers to all the moving pieces. And in the group, being able to talk about that, because talking about that tension, so many people think, I have to show up a certain way. But in these groups, you can show up as a human and get support and insight from your peers around this.
Absolutely.
Something that you were sharing about how this becomes translatable to the day-to-day work. In terms of what you see in a coaching space, I often will hear people coming to a group coaching space saying, I want to work on my executive presence or my influence, or I want to understand how to be more effective in my job. That will be the language. Or I just don't feel confident. How do I bridge that gap? And I think what you're talking about, that slowing down, that taking a moment, getting different perspectives, and allows them to feel a little bit more assured in themselves so that they can step forward. Leaving our programs often in the feedback that we get is like, I feel more confident. I can advocate for myself. I can communicate about my strengths, which sometimes is the most stretchy thing for people. And then other people say, I can communicate about my weaknesses or the things I'm working on while advocating for myself. And when all of those come together, someone is experiencing more confidence, so they show up with more influence and they show up better prepared to do their job in a way that will have other people respond. And so that's like kind of the thread I see between the last few minutes of our conversation.
And one of the things I would add, you said executive presence. We were talking about change last week, and someone had said, in being able to communicate effectively to my team, I need to have better executive presence. And someone said, I'm curious, and he asked the group, I'm curious, what does executive presence mean to everybody? And we went there and people talked about different things. And at the end, two people said, can we explore this as part of one of our sessions together? And the group said we would. Everybody, even the people who did understand and have great executive presence, they wanted to talk a little bit about that. And so we will explore that because that's what emerged in the group.
Love that.
You're highlighting something that is really core to the impact that we drive, which is every session has a structure and has a container, but we ultimately know that our coaches are incredible at recognizing what the group needs. And so leaning into areas that the group really wants to explore is absolutely part of our approach. And we're really clear with our clients, this is not a workshop with a script. This is quite different from that. We have a clear container, a clear structure to the session, but also we want people to bring what they're really working on to the space so that it can be as impactful as possible.
And that happened a couple weeks ago in one of our sessions where I tend to open my sessions with a series of questions. And I say, let's go around. Each of you answer the question that really resonates with you right now. Someone answered the question with the term passive disagreement. And as he answered the question, you could see in the Zoom, everybody leaned in. Somebody said, me too, in the chat. And I said, would we like to stay here and explore this? And we spent 10 minutes talking about how do you deal with somebody who is passively disagreeing? How can you tell if they are? And it was such a rich conversation that nobody expected to have, but was incredibly valuable because in that moment, being able to sense what people really wanted to explore and making the space for that instead of saying, oh, we're talking about this, so we need to move on. That's like workshop facilitation. That's not group coaching. Group coaching is about making the space for what emerges
Yeah.
and asking the group, do we want to stay here?
Incredible. Thank you so much, Susan, for joining us. This has been a really fun conversation, and excited for more to come.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
This was
you.
great.